Just waiting for another camera to turn on. There we go. Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your Evelyn O'Shorty, and today it's Immortal X-Men issue 1. And I pretty much start all of my reviews of X-Men saying there's an awful lot of X-Men stuff I don't know, and that's one of the reasons why I don't read all the X-Men stuff, because it always feels like I'm coming in like really late to it. But I always think an issue 1, especially with a miniseries, especially when it's picked as being like the next big chapter of it, is worth paying attention. It's why I did review Tickman's issue 1 and thoroughly enjoyed it, including the fact that he did a very good bit of work kind of restating and reforming why there are multiple timelines, and it all ties into Moira McTaggart. Effectively, when she dies, the timeline resets, but she remembers things that happened before. Cool bit of writing. Really like how that came together and explained an awful lot of stuff within world. It didn't feel like just hand waving, but it also didn't feel like it was just ignoring a whole bunch of other stuff. Now that is relevant because Gillen is going to play around with that idea as well, and I like the fact that he's building on something. I also like the fact that he's building on something I know. It's actually kind of rare that happens with an X-Men comic book. The number of times I've had conversations with my friends when I've been trying to get into X-Men and I've been saying, yeah, I've no idea what's going on. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, it's perfectly fine. You don't need to read all this X-Men stuff, but you do need to know that this happened and that was that writer doing that as part of this arc of this event. All that kind of stuff just makes it a little bit harder. So, Gillen, you've already got like off the mark there really, really well for me. But I understand it might not still be everyone's cup of tea, because the X-Men comic books, specifically at the moment, are thoroughly embracing the idea of the costumed superhero or supervillain. I'm not in kind of any post-ironic or ironic kind of way. And it always makes me think back to the original X-Men movie. I don't know the original. The ones that came out a good few years ago now, when they introduced Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, those movies, where the character design and the costumes were all a little bit more down to earth, a little bit more standard, rather than over the top. And it felt like, yeah, that's because these are people who are just embracing it. They don't really have much else to go on how they should be acting. The X-Men in the comic books have been around for a very, very long time, and they have superpowers, and they're engaging in over-the-top Machiavellian conspiracies. So why not embrace the vaudevillian aspect of it? Why not go all out and wear the ridiculous costumes and speak like you are in a melodrama? Why not do that? Because you've had lifetimes, generations of maybe trying to fit in and maybe trying to do something the way everyone expects you to do it. So why not do it in the way that's most fun for you? Now, I can say that maybe that doesn't necessarily appeal to too many people. I get that. My current favorite superhero stuff is Daredevil, which is very much more down to earth and a little bit more normal. Even like the main bad guy at the moment, Kingpin, who's literally using superpowered mind control to try and become president of the United States, it still feels like there's a lot of down street level kind of storytelling, and it's great, and I like it for that. But it's also quite funny when they do it this way. If you've never watched the Adam West Batman series, I invite you to go and watch. In fact, go and watch it again, but bear in mind how over the top and how ridiculous the entire concept and conceit is, and also how ludicrous and over the top the plot points are. And that in and of itself is quite funny. You can look at something that's happened in that TV series and just chuckle to yourself. But what makes it absolutely hilarious and makes it worth rewatching is the fact that all the characters within it absolutely engage with what's happening as if it's perfectly normal and is actually the way the world works and is not an unusual thing. They accept that the Penguin does what he does and has an umbrella which fires bullets, and it's a real threat, and the Riddler is genuinely a terrifying person who just wears a skin-tight onesie and asks weird questions. They embrace that and go along with it. And I feel like if you can get your head around that kind of style of storytelling for this level of over-the-top, again, I'm using some melodrama, vaudevillian kind of stuff. It fits that kind of description. If you can get your head around that as something to be entertained by, this is very funny. It is also very dark and very well written. Gillen writes some fantastic characters. Sinister is brilliant. He's the main POV kind of character. But even some of the background people only get one or two lines, or the excellent Selena vampire character, who I didn't really know anything about. She's wonderful. Genuinely love her. The artwork is one of the few things where there isn't quite as much to say. It falls into what I generally refer to as Marvel in-house style, and I use that term derogatorily sometimes because I think it lacks a certain nuance. It doesn't allow freedom of expression in the same way that a lot of indie comics or even some Marvel stuff, where they're not aimed to be like the biggest sellers of all time, can get away with a bit more interesting artwork. But I really like it in this situation. There is a certain over-the-top bold line on the outside of a lot of the characters, which I wish was a little bit more universal. As an artistic choice, I really liked it, but it wasn't used enough. And the characterization of facial expressions is phenomenal. Every time there is a sneer towards camera or a raised eyebrow in mock disbelief, it's brilliant, and it absolutely accentuates the writing and the characterization. It is one of the few times I'm going to say this is probably some of the best of Marvel in-house style I've ever seen. Genuinely worth checking out. It's another of those situations where, if, like me, you've been put off reading X-Men for a while because of how complicated and interwoven all the stories are, this could be the breaking point. It could give you a chance to do it in a way that's thoroughly enjoyable. But for now, I'm done. I'll be back tomorrow with another review. So until then, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.